And they said, well, that must be because companies with bad news are doing their earnings calls at one time of day, and companies with good news are doing it at another time of day. And so they control for that. And what it turned out is that that wasn't it at all. That afternoon calls were more negative and irritable than calls in the morning, to the point where it affected the stock price. And so here you have, when you think about this, here you have, the CEOs and CFOs of public companies who are doing these earnings calls. They are extraordinarily well prepared for these calls. There's a whole apparatus inside of these companies to ready these executives for these calls. And these executives have a huge amount of money on the line. Like one misstated word or one, that can be worth millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And yet, so you have the quintessential rational actors, CEOs, CFOs, who are well prepared, who are generally reasonably intelligent people. And yet these patterns of the day are so powerful that they leak. And again, I think one of the things that's so powerful about this research is how it ranges over so many domains. We see this in education. There's some powerful research out of Denmark showing kids who take standardized tests in the afternoon, in general, score as if they've missed 2 weeks of school compared to kids who take standardized tests in the morning. There's research out of the LA Unified School District. Again, a lot of this research is using ginormous data sets. There's research out of the LA Unified School District looking at something like 2 million students, anonymized students in the LA Unified School District. They found students who take math in the morning learn more math, have higher grades, do better on statewide standardized tests than kids who take math in the afternoon. If you look at healthcare, you are 4 times more likely to experience an error by an anesthesiologist in a procedure that begins at 3 p.m. rather than one that begins at 9 a.m. If you look at doctors performing colonoscopies, they find half as many polyps in afternoon exams as they do for morning exams for the same population. And so over and over again, we see this just at this one area of time of day, that it has a material effect on how people perform. And so if we stop ignoring that and start being deliberate and intentional about making decisions when we do things, I mean, we're literally going to save lives in the healthcare realm. And we're going to perform better. Kids are going to learn more. Companies are going to perform better. Individuals like us are going to get more work done if we just take this question of when a little more seriously.
Yeah. And it's not fatalistic either, right? I mean, you don't, in the case of the hospitals, those errors, they're more rampant in the afternoon, but there are ways that hospitals are making up for it. And whether it's through their checklists, right? Or being extra vigilant and having multiple eyes on a single patient. There are definitely ways to alleviate the risk.
It's absolutely, and a lot of it goes to breaks. So you have hospitals, and in this book, When, that I wrote, I went to the University of Michigan hospital to spend some time actually in surgical theaters to see what nurses and physicians and other medical personnel were doing. And some of it is breaks. They take a break. They take a vigilance break before surgery to go through everything using a checklist, as you say. There's some very interesting research from Katie Milkman at Penn and Brad Statz at the University of North Carolina, looking at how hand washing in hospitals deteriorates significantly in the afternoon, which is dangerous for hospital-acquired infections and all other kinds of bad stuff. But a way to make that problem not go away, but a way to reduce the problem is to give especially nurses more breaks in the afternoon, and to give them social breaks, breaks where they go off in pairs or threes. And so you're exactly right. We're not fatalistic about this thing. It's not, time of day doesn't determine how things are going to turn out, but we are biological creatures. We're temporal creatures, and the patterns of the day, the diurnal patterns of the world we live in and of our own bodies, have an effect on how we perform. And if we're aware of that and make better decisions about it, we're going to do better.
Now, this is the average, right? This is the average pattern for most people. I think you said 60%. Can you tell us, this whole idea of being a morning person or a night owl? I'm not going to lie. For a long time, I thought it was fictional. I thought people were just
Yeah,
making up reasons why they just needed more coffee in the
totally,
morning. But it's a
totally.
real thing. So what is chronobiology? And then how can you calculate your own?
Great. So it is an absolutely real thing, and exactly as you say, it comes from this field of chronobiology. So chrono meaning time, biology meaning study of life, and so there is an entire field of science that looks at our biological rhythms, our time-based biological rhythms. And one of the key areas, and in fact, there are three American scientists who won the Nobel Prize in medicine, not this year, but the previous year. They were all chronobiologists. And one of the things that chronobiologists have done is said, this morning people, evening people thing, it's not fiction. There's a biological truth to it. So here's what we know. About 15% of us are very strong morning people. That is, we naturally wake up early and go to sleep early. About 20% of us are very strong evening people. Go to sleep late, wake up late. So 15% of us are larks, 20% of us are owls, and about 2/3 of us are in the middle, what I call third birds. And so there are ways to figure that out for yourself. There are two very good scientifically validated instruments, that is questionnaires, assessments. One of them is called the Munich Chronotype Questionnaire, the MCTQ.
That sounds fancy.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Another one is called the Morning Eveningness Questionnaire. So you can take that. There's also a back of the envelope way to figure it out. I mean, I could do it with you if you wanted.
Would love it.
Right now.
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Okay, so I want you to
Game.
think about, and I'm glad that you're a skeptic on this on this too, because I was too. And particularly because I always thought I always wanted to be one of those like badasses who wake up at 4:00 in the morning and, run 8 miles and then read 3 newspapers in 2 different languages and then meditate for half an hour and then get into the office at 6:30.
Dan, you just described Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
Kidding.
Well, I mean, because he could be, but he could have the advantage in that he could be a serious morning person.
Yeah.
He could have an edge on that.
Well, he's actually the opposite. Anybody who's ever been to an event knows he's a night person. But we'll see. I'll take the test.
Maybe he doesn't. Yeah. Maybe he doesn't need any sleep. Maybe he's one of the very rare people.
It. Yep.
I mean, there is a very small. Most civilians, most normal mortal people, and he might not be mortal. Need 7 or 8 hours of sleep every night. But there is and chronobiologists have actually looked at this. There is a tiny portion. It's tiny, 1%, maybe 2% of people who can get by